Hello everyone, welcome back to the Capablanca saga. We are back at the 1914 tournament of St. Petersburg, and Capablanca faces a very strong opponent. It's Dr. Siegbert Tarrasch with the white pieces. This is the second game the two of them have ever played. The first one we've already seen it. It's the one from the 1911 tournament in San Sebastian, where Tarrasch again had the white pieces, and that game ended in a draw, some 35 moves if I remember correctly. And in that game we had the Italian game. Now I just want to mention before we check out this game, it's a very nice game, but previous game we've seen that brilliance against Osip Bernstein, and Capablanca created already two brilliances against Osip Bernstein, and most of the times you will hear about Osip Bernstein. If you're not really studying chess history, most likely you will hear his name when he loses a game to Capablanca. But you should not judge his skill by bringing out the best in Jose Raul Capablanca to take him down. He was an excellent player, one of the best of that era, and definitely a great player. So don't judge the man by by losing two brilliances to one of the greatest players who ever played chess. But okay, that being said, here Capablanca's opponent is Dr. Siegbert Tarrasch. He's probably twice his age, but he has already defeated many of the strongest players that ever even lived, and well, Capablanca will not take him lightly, especially after the game in San Sebastian tournament. And without further ado, let's check out this very nice game. Tarrasch opens with e4, as he did in San Sebastian 3 years ago. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and here in San Sebastian he went bishop to c4. Here he goes bishop to b5. So we have the Ruy Lopez. And Tarrasch is also having a pretty excellent tournament, except for the round 1 loss. He lost to David Janovsky. Other than that, he's doing quite all right. We have a6, Capablanca goes for Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, knight to f6, knight to c3, and bishop to e7. We have d3, d6, all pretty standard, and here, as Capablanca chose this d6 idea, Tarrasch decides to lose a tempo, somewhat an unusual idea, to immediately go for d4 here. So first d3 and only then d4. And Capablanca plays bishop to d7. You don't want to allow d5, and while Capablanca could capture here, bishop to d7 is better. Bishop captures on c6. Tarrasch decides to give up the bishop pair. We have bishop captures. Now comes queen to d3, defending the e4 pawn. E captures on d4, knight captures on d4, attacking the bishop. Capablanca goes back to d7, and now castle. We have castles by Capablanca as well, and now rook to e1. So not really all that advantageous for white, but Tarrasch did manage to keep plenty of the pieces on the board and not allow Capablanca to go straight in some sort of an endgame. And it's most likely a line that Capablanca is not familiar with. We have rook to e8 by Capablanca, and now comes h3. h6, both players pretty much waste a move to make some breathing space for the king, but also, okay, white is taking away the g4 square from black's knight and bishop, and black is taking away the g5 square from white's bishop. And now comes queen to g3. Tarrasch is now threatening bishop captures on h6 as the pawn on g7 is pinned. Capablanca moves the king, unpins, and now developing the bishop to d2. We have bishop to f8. Now Capablanca's rook is also participating in the game. Also, the bishop gives some more protection to the king side. And queen back to d3. So not really a clear plan as to what Tarrasch is doing, but so far it's hard to say that he would have any advantage, even though he has the white pieces. We have c6 by Capablanca, preparing expansion on the queen side, but also black would definitely want to push d5 to get rid of pretty much his only weakness in the position. Rook 8 to d1, Tarrasch now completes development, and now queen to e7. We have a knight back to f3, now with ideas of maybe pushing e5, but now bishop to e6. And here e5 is a possibility, but after d captures, knight captures, black would be in no problem after queen to c7, just getting the queen out of the e-file. The rook is coming to d8, and all is well for black. So here we have bishop to f4 by Tarrasch, going after the d6 pawn, but now comes rook 8 to d8. Capablanca also pretty much finishes development, and queen to e3, getting the queen out of the d-file, but also perhaps considering some ideas of infiltrating along the queenside files. And now you can see that black's bishop is quite useful, even though it's kind of weird. on f8, as it prevents against ideas like bishop captures on h6, captures with the queen, knight g5, some sort of an attack against the black king. And Capablanca plays d5, and it's usually said that if black can push d5 and equalize without giving any concessions, then white missed something in the opening and he's no longer better. And such is the case here. White definitely is not better here. E captures on d5, we have knight captures, and now comes bishop captures. Capablanca now manages to trade queens. Queen captures, we have bishop captures, not immediately going for the rook trade, and here we have a very interesting moment. Here, okay, the a2 pawn is under attack, but you don't really want to capture immediately because, you'd go Spassky Fischer, but white could go b3, prepare c4, just continue playing the game. But here Tarrasch had a different idea. Here Tarrasch played rook captures on e7. And what's his plan here? Capablanca, of course, recaptures, we have rook captures, and now c4. And it seems, okay, the bishop will move, you will give back the pawn, rook will capture, rook with check. This is definitely excellent for white, but he missed an idea by Capablanca. So here you should imagine that you're playing a game against your friend or an opponent in a very strong tournament, and your opponent just plays rook captures on e7. It's a move you weren't expecting, or maybe you were, and you're ready for it. You recapture, and he plays c4. So what do you do here with black? Feel free to pause the video here and try to refute black's plan. I'll give you a couple of seconds as usual. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations. You are an excellent refuter of plans that don't work. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, rook to e4. The bishop on f4 is unguarded, and also you wouldn't mind grabbing this pawn that's kind of harassing your bishop on d5. So now you don't have time to capture here because rook captures, and then black is just up the exchange. So after Tarrasch went bishop to e3, we now have rook captures on c4, grabbing this as well. But okay, it's not just that Tarrasch blundered here. Tarrasch does have an idea. He goes knight to e5, and it's a very nice move. The rook is under attack, and if the rook moves, for example, if Capablanca were to play rook b4, go after this pawn, then knight captures on f7 will be deadly. It's a check, the rook is nicely forked, and you will either move the king and then lose the rook, or you will capture the knight and then you lose the rook with check. After king moves, bishop to d4, defends the pawn, and you don't want to do something like captures, then rook comes here, attacks g7, and white would definitely be better here. Not much, but better. So after knight e5, Capablanca plays rook to b8. He gives back the exchange, but wants to protect the b7 pawn. So after this exchange happens, which did happen, rook to d7 does not come with an attack against the b7 pawn, so it's not a free rook lift. We have a3 now, not allowing bishop captures because now it definitely is a threat, and now bishop to d5, closing off the d file from Tarrasch's rook. We have rook to e1, transferring the rook over to the other open file on the board, which is the e file, and now rook to d8 by Capablanca. Bishop to b6, and now comes rook to d7. And here, Tarrasch is down a pawn, so basically he blundered a pawn with that whole idea where he tried to play fancy, and he now wishes to take this into an opposite color bishop's endgame, which he is very confident in himself that he can hold to a draw. So he goes rook to e8, check, we have king to h7, and now king to h2 first. Preparing rook to d8, we have bishop to c4, and now comes rook to d8. Here, Capablanca decided to move the bishop, so he doesn't have to trade rooks here. Now he can move the rook. If the bishop remained on the d file, perhaps it could have been a target later. Now comes rook to e7, and here we have rook to d4, attacking the Capablanca's bishop. Bishop goes back to d5, and now a4. Capablanca, of course, as we mentioned, does not want to trade rooks. The opposite colored bishop endgame is most likely to result in a draw. So rook to e2, now attacking the b2 pawn, but also the f2 pawn. But this was Tarrasch's idea. b4, as the f2 pawn is protected with a tactic. If you capture here, then yes, you are threatening some very nasty stuff here. But rook captures on d5, and white is just better. You don't want to capture first, so first you would have to capture with check, king captures, and only after capturing here you would get this endgame where Capablanca would be up 3 pawns but down a piece. So would it be playable? It's hard to say. Most likely black would end up playing for a draw. Let's say king f3, king g6, king f4. You could go f6, create a wall here against the white king, but then just king e3. You want to go here, king f5, king d4, king e6, and it's hard to say, but you know, a piece is a piece. Most likely, at some point, black will run out of moves. White will be able to control all of the pawns here on this side of the board with the bishop and this pawn, and it will be black who will be struggling for a draw if it's at all possible. And if it, you know, if it was possible to go for this with black, Capablanca would have done so. So after this b4 move, you cannot capture on f2 immediately, but here Capablanca finds an excellent plan. Here he plays a5. And what's the idea with a5? Well, you either play bishop captures, then rook captures on f2 is just winning. There are no more tricks with rook captures on d5, and there's really no way to... Well, you could go rook g4 to defend it, but then g5 pretty much traps your rook here for the rest of the game guarding this. f5 is coming, f4, f3, and it will just become very unpleasant for white, and eventually white will lose. So, after this a5 move, you could just waste a move and wait for pawn captures, which is not something you want to do. So B captures on a5 was played by Tarrasch. And now what Capablanca did here is he successfully created a passed c pawn. And Capablanca's b pawn will be very successful in defending against both doubled a pawns here. So we have rook to c2 first, preparing c5, rook to b4, and now c5. We have rook to f4, and now bishop back to e6. So now Capablanca will simply move his rook and start pushing his pass pawn. How will Tarrasch defend against this? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. We have rook to f3. The c3 is a dark square, so Tarrasch will now create a blockade. He will put his rook here to control c3, and also his dark square bishop will help out in protecting the c3 square. And with black having only a light square bishop, this pawn will not be able to cross a dark square. Something you always want to, you know, keep an eye out for. We have c4 by Capablanca, bishop to d4 now, controlling this, the dark square twice. But now comes rook to a2. Capablanca creates a second weakness, which are the doubled a pawns. And as you all know, there is nothing a rook likes more than a doubled pawn. Perhaps maybe a back rank mate, but other than that, you know, a doubled pawn is very, very nice. King to g1. Tarrasch now tries to bring his king into the game. We have rook captures on a4, and now bishop to c3, blockading the c4 pawn, but also guarding the a5 pawn. We have rook back to a2. Now comes rook to g3, pressuring the g7 pawn by the rook and by the bishop. G5 now, and now comes rook to e3. Now, immediately going for f5 is not possible due to rook captures on e6. Rook to c2, now putting pressure on this bishop. So here, if king to f1, then ideas like f5 maybe would be possible. If rook captures, then you would eliminate this bishop, but it's still most likely to result in a draw. But first Tarrasch goes bishop to d4. Now we have rook to c1 check, forcing the king back, king to h2, and now king to g6, starting to bring the king into the game. King to g3 by Tarrasch, and now comes rook to d1, attacking the bishop, and bishop to c3. And here rook to d3 is an interesting idea, but even after rook captures, pawn captures, you are never crossing a dark square with your pass pawn, and also the bishop is very nicely controlling the a pawn, which is on a dark square. Most likely we would have a nice drawn game here. So after bishop to c3, we have bishop to d5 first, now with some ideas of going rook g1 and rook captures here. So we have f3, blocking the bishop, and now comes rook to c1. Again, putting pressure on Tarrasch's bishop on c3, bishop to d4, and now rook to c2. And here Capablanca is testing Tarrasch. If Tarrasch were to play something like bishop to c3, just repeat moves and hope for a draw, it doesn't work because now white is lost. It's a nice position, you know, just when you think you have an opposite color bishop endgame, the rooks are still on the board, so the game is still very much playable. If Tarrasch were to play this, again, pause the video and try to figure out how to win this with the black pieces. I'll give you a couple of seconds, as I usually do. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations. You are an excellent winner of winning endgames. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, f5. And now you can see that there is no way for this rook to remain on e3 because f4 is a terrible threat, which checks the king and would win the rook, but also the rook has to stay there to keep an eye on the bishop. So to prevent both threats, you would have to go king h2. Now f4 kicks the rook away, but now rook e5 will trade bishops, but after now rook captures, you will get king to f6, and now the king is too far away to successfully play this endgame. Black will eventually win this. For example, rook c5, you want to put the rook behind the passed pawn, either your own pawn or your opponent's pawn. King e6, now comes king g1, king d6, force the rook back, rook c8, king d5, now king f2, coming into the game, but now rook to a3 makes the room for the king to start pushing the passed pawn all the way, and also you will win this pawn, and then the other pawn comes marching forward as well. So pretty much there are a lot of winning ideas here for black. So Tarrasch does not try to repeat moves and make this mistake. You know, Tarrasch is a very successful chess player. So rook to a3, Tarrasch prepares a6. We have f5 by Capablanca, now comes a6, and here first f4 with check. You don't want to play something like king g4 and run into this rook captures on g2 checkmate. You always have to watch out for ideas like this. King to h2, and now comes b captures on a6. Rook captures on a6, and now it's, well, not lucky, but very nicely calculated by Tarrasch that this grabbing of the pawn comes with a check, because Capablanca would be ready to capture bishop captures on f3 due to the g-pawn being pinned. We have king back to f7, and now comes king to g1. Tarrasch now again wants to improve the position of his king and also not allow bishop captures on f3. And here we have h5. This is a move which pretty much blunders the game for Capablanca. It was made rather hastily because here this allows rook to f6 check, which Tarrasch immediately played. Here, after this, instead of this h5 move, the only way to continue playing this for an advantage, as Capablanca is still up a passed pawn, is rook to d2. You attack the bishop, and after bishop to c3, rook to d3. But still, after the rook comes to a3, it's hard to imagine that you would ever be able to force this bishop and rook away from the dark squares, even though you're up a passed pawn, which is, you know, sad, but if there was a way to continue playing this game, it would be this. Unfortunately for Capablanca, he played h5, or maybe he just calculated that the idea I've just shown is no better. He played h5, and he allowed this rook to f6 check. King to e7 was played, and now after rook to f5, Zygmunt Tarrasch and Jose Ruel Capablanca agreed to a draw. So the second game they ever played, the first one, like we said, the Italian game, second one, the Ruy Lopez, both games played by white from Tarrasch's perspective were drawn because now, well, your bishop is under attack, your g5 pawn is under attack. After you go king e6, you lose the g pawn. And then we have this very nice endgame that both players agreed it was a draw. As Capablanca did not cover this game in any of his books, I still don't have Tarrasch's book, so I don't know if he covered it in his book, couldn't find the information. So maybe the game was even adjourned here, and then they just decided that, you know, the endgame is drawn. But we could play it out. Let's say rook c1 check, king f2, rook c2 check, king e1, c3 now, you would get rook to e5 check, king d6, and now rook captures on h5. Bishop to c4, bishop to e5 check. We have king to c6, and now king to d1, attacking the rook. Rook d2 check, and now you would go, let's say, king e1, and now you either go for the g pawn or you deliver this check. If you go for the check, then king d1, you could go c2 check, king c1, and now, of course, you would like to immediately finish this. You want to prepare rook to e1 check, but the pawn on c2 is unguarded. Bishop d3, but now bishop captures on f4 will guard the queening square, and white will be just up a few pawns, but all in all, a drawn endgame. And on the other hand, if you don't go for this, if after king e1 you go for rook captures on g2, then you just get bishop captures on c3. You no longer have your prized passed c pawn. Rook e2 check, king d1, rook to e3, going after the pawn here, and now we just trade everything. Bishop e5, rook captures, rook to h4, goes after the f4 pawn, bishop to e6, attacks the h3 pawn, and now just captures, and we have a draw by insufficient material. So yeah, after this king e7, rook f5 was played, and they agreed to a draw. So a very nice game by both of them. Tarrasch tried that sneaky idea, but Capablanca saw through it, was able to win a pawn, but it was not enough to push this opposite colored bishop plus rook endgame into something more than a draw. And it's hard to say. Maybe I will have more information when Tarrasch's book about this great tournament arrives, but for now I have no knowledge if Capablanca pushed h5 willingly, or he just maybe hard to say that he missed rook f6 check, or why he didn't go for this rook to d2 idea. But yeah, maybe we'll have some better idea when I receive Tarrasch's book. And I don't want to spoil anything, but a certain someone will qualify into the second part of this amazing tournament, and then we will have two really amazing games between two of them. And also an interesting information, Capablanca faced Siegbert Tarrasch 6 times in his entire life, and out of those 6 games, Tarrasch had the white pieces 5 times, and only Capablanca had white pieces only once. But still, the end result was in Capablanca's favor, an interesting fact. Hope that doesn't spoil too much, but yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I do hope you're enjoying my coverage of the Capablanca saga so far. I would like to thank Andrew Granado, Joseph Tabita, Justin Wysinki, Malcolm Hamilton, and Fran Vidic for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting content. You know how it goes. Thank you all, and I will see you soon.